David Zaslav is bad for DC. I've come down to that realization. He cancelled Batgirl without even telling the people who made the film. He rehired Henry Cavill only to fire him months later. These decisions come from the very top, and he's the problem. He sold Tom Cruise a bunch of IMAX screens for Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning, then got Cruise to lie that he loved the Flash movie. He got James Gunn to lie that the Flash movie was one of the best CBMs he'd ever seen, because he thought this was going to be a winning tactic. And it wasn't. James Gunn's been interfering with the remaining DCEU movies because they refused to do a clean reboot. David Zaslav is bad for DC. We thought that David was going to come in and be the big hero, pull out his sword and save DC, maybe restore the Snyderverse, maybe a clean reboot. Either would have been fine with me. James Gunn's been confusing audiences. It's been an insane situation. Because let me be clear, the Emmerich era and the Johns era was bad. The release the Snyder Cut campaign was one of the most craziest, insane moments in Hollywood history. What they did to Snyder, how they fucked up the plan that Snyder was implementing, insanity. And we were just looking for some sanity. AT&T didn't know what the hell they were doing, but at least they released the Snyder Cut at the very least. And Stanky, the CEO and president of AT&T, pulled 70 million out of his own pocket and gave it to Snyder. It was the right thing to do. It was righting a wrong. But even he had a war with WB Pictures, Emmerich and all those people. It was hard for AT&T with WB Pictures actually fighting against them. But David Zaslav is a huge problem. And he's very reactive. He blows with the wind. That's obvious. That isn't a good thing for James Gunn either. But guess what? It isn't a good thing for any of us. Because I do believe when Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom flops, and it will flop, I believe that could be curtains for James Gunn. Now, imagine if James Gunn got fired, but Safran kept his job. Any CEO in David Zaslav's position who looks at Peter Safran, now I've seen him in interviews, I like him. He's a very measured, good talker. But anyone can talk. I can talk on here. You see me in the real world, you may not be very, very impressed with me. Anyone can talk. Anyone can be a smooth talker. But Peter Safran was part of the old regime. He was part of the Hamadaverse, whose movies are being released and flopping. When general audiences hear a DCEU movie is being released, they shrug their shoulders and don't bother watching it. Access Media keep on asking, what's happened to all the DC fans? As you don't fucking know. They were driven out by incompetence and creative bankruptcy. I gave you a great analogy yesterday, blowing air into the balloon, then deflating it again. That's what they did by getting rid of Snyder. Because whether audiences like Snyder stuff or not, those movies did make a profit, and they were gladiatory. They were huge. They were epic. Then instead of that, the general audience got that, which maybe is something they didn't particularly care for. Some of them did, some of them didn't, right? Let's not debate that. But then they got Birds of Prey, Shazam, Wonder Woman 84. So we went from the epicness of Snyder to jack shit. Are you surprised that audiences have moved away, don't care about the DCEU anymore? Of course, the Batman 2 will have a wide audience, and so will Joker Folia do. Because audiences go with what excites them. The Batman 2 will excite them, and Joker Folia do will excite them. It's individual, they trust the directors. It's all about trust, everyone. They didn't know the Blue Beetle director from Adam. And I think even with the MCU, I can start to see now, they're using unnamed directors that they can, let's just say, direct. And audiences are starting to say, well, who are you? I don't actually trust you. You're just someone who wants to make some money. You're just someone who's going to say, yes, sir, Mr. Feig. I'll bend over, just tell me how far. That's the problem. They want tough directors like Snyder to say, no, you're not controlling what I'm doing. I'm going to make the best movie I can through my artistic vision for the audience. This is the way it's going now. Like, when you look at who directed Barbie, I think if she didn't direct Barbie, that film would have been up shit's creek without a paddle. But because she's a well-trusted director, the audience trusted her and came in. I think now you've really got to be looking at directors with kind of a trust, a bond with the audience. That's a good thing. And Access Media can say what they want about the Snyderverse, fandom. It's a great example there, the relationship between Snyder and his fans. He trusts us and we trust him because we picked him up when he was down, and him and Deb will never forget that. There's nothing wrong with having that type of relationship. The idiot from the THR article asking what's happened to all the DC fans was putting those type of relationships down. But those relationships worked because at the end of the day, Snyder's two movies combined made more money than any other DCEU thing after Snyder left. Any DCEU film after Snyder left. Combine both the box office for Man of Steel and BVS, you get more than Aquaman and more than the other flops as well. And Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom ain't making another billion. It would be amazing if it did. I don't think it will. And I think it's curtains. So Zaslav is bad for DC. And I didn't think that. I did my research. He did a great job at Discovery. And his shareholders clearly love him because he's made them a lot of money. But his shareholders now are looking at him and scratching their heads because David Zaslav knows nothing about scripted television, streaming, or movies. He knows nothing. He's admitted that. That's why he brought in some advisors. But it's not just his lack of knowledge of the entertainment industry, it's his decision making. Because David Zaslav isn't a builder. He's a destructor. He's a man you bring in when you're up shit's creek. He's a man you bring in when you're about to go into bankruptcy, into receivership. He cuts costs. That's why he sold the CW. He wasn't making any money. They had to sell it. They've sold this, they've sold that. They're selling stuff to Netflix, Amazon, everything, right? They're selling off everything, right? Soon they'll be selling their middle toe as well. So that's why Zaslav is here. Zaslav isn't here to build a great DC universe. He's just here to get people to lie about that and sell off everything that Warner Brothers has built up in the past. Dumb decisions like rebooting Harry Potter on Max, taking it away from theatres. Now, if this is such a smart guy, why hasn't he looked at the original Harry Potter slate and the box office it made? He's taking away that money and putting it on streaming, and you have to ask why. And all I've heard from them is it's going to be a more inclusive series. Boring, boring, boring. Put the kettle on. It's got bells on it. Here we go again. So he has no clue. And he's making the DC situation worse. He's making other situations worse around WB. Nobody trusts him. And everybody hates him. The talent in Hollywood hates him. Nobody trusts him because he's made bad decisions and he's not apologetic. He doesn't regret those decisions because basically he's been brought in to do a job. Don't forget that AT&T is still the majority shareholder of Warner Brothers, and they put him in charge because they ran the thing into the ground because of their lack of experience, like him, of the entertainment industry. So they thought, big boy David can save us. He knows how to cut costs. And as I say, because the entertainment industry isn't making any money, because they've driven their customers away, now we've got this industrial action, they're in trouble and they don't know where to look next. These are the facts. So he's not good for DC. Let's look at how he formed DC Studios, something we thought, yeah, David knows what he's doing. It's about time we're getting a DC Studios that doesn't seem to have many employees, a DC Studios that doesn't even have a social media account. And what is it doing? Nobody really knows what they're doing. The people there don't know what they're doing. And again, I'll have to ask the question, why is Saffron there, a guy who's running the previous DC film division with Hamada, or at least producing it? Why is he and Gunn running it? Because Gunn and Saffron are part of the Toby Emmerich School of Villainy. Emmerich brought Gunn in to do the Suicide Squad or whatever the fuck he wanted. So nothing's changed. Saslav hasn't changed anything. He wanted us to think he was going to change things, but he didn't. He came in and he had posters of the Snyderverse, BVS, everything, right? Everything DC, and he put 3 posters, 3 balls up in this big meeting. We heard about it. Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman. They were going to be the 3 big things he was going to focus on because he believes that's where the money is. Of course that's where the money is, but it's also through making individual, auteur-directed movies. You could do one on Superman. You could do one on Batman, which Matt Reeves has already done and will continue to do, and one on Wonder Woman. Well, where's our Wonder Woman movie? We're getting a Paradise Lost prequel. Why? Why aren't we getting a Wonder Woman movie with Gal or with another actor? I couldn't give a shit which happens. Why aren't we getting a Wonder Woman movie? These are the people who believe they're empathetic. These are the people who believe they want to represent and be inclusive. Where's my fucking Wonder Woman movie? It's nowhere to be seen because we're dealing with an incompetent CEO who doesn't know what he's doing. People want to blame James Gunn, but we should put the blame at the very top. David Zaslav asked everyone, including his grandmother probably, she's probably not alive by the way, to run DC Studios. And when those people finished laughing, including Todd Phillips and Matt Reeves by the way, wanted them to run DC Studios together, which would have been fucking awesome. But they said no. So at the end he goes, oh, all right, Peter and James, maybe you can do it. Basically, he didn't have anywhere to turn because he wasn't going to let anyone have control of DC Studios and do their thing. We're getting a cinematic universe because David Zaslav thinks that's where the money is. And it's not. It's a disaster. Forget the Snyderverse. I'm not talking about the Snyderverse and everything that happened there. You know I'm a fan. I'm not talking about that. I'm not screaming and venting now because they haven't restored the Snyderverse. At the very least, if you're going to do a cinematic universe, reboot the fucking thing. But cinematic universes, as I say every day on this platform, are not the way to go. Basically, individual, auteur-run movies. Do your vision on Batman, on Superman, but give us other characters as well. There's so many great characters that you can make individual, independent films on and have something to say about them. What I loved about the Smallville TV show, it had something to say about Clark Kent and especially Lex Luthor. Nobody had anything to say about Clark and Lex like that before, but Alfred Gough and Miles Miller did. I love watching this podcast with Michael Rosenbaum and Tom Welling every week, and sometimes Alfred Gough comes on, the co-creator of the show, and he talked about a very interesting episode where we find out that Jor-El had been to Smallville, and it was the kindness of Jonathan Kent's father when he was in trouble that made him decide to send Clark to Smallville. So before, and in the comics, it was random. But Al was talking about on the podcast how it didn't really make sense that you would randomly just send your son to another planet. And if you could, and if you were an intelligent being, you would put some planning into it. And I like, sometimes changing canon is really good and it's not bad. And this is what we need from DC now. You don't want to oversaturate with superheroes. People are drowning in superheroes. I don't know what Fake does with this big MCU plan. I don't see how they make any money from it going forward because it's gone. It's finished. People are bored of cinematic universes. They just want to see great movies. I want to see great movies. James Gunn's cinematic universe isn't what the Doctor ordered. And here's the truth. We're getting a Superman movie. Of course, I'm excited because I'm a Superman fan. But I told you from the very beginning, I was worried about James Gunn writing and directing a Superman film. Because let's look at the facts. He didn't agree to direct the film when he agreed to write it. He didn't want to direct the film. He said himself that he had to think about being on a film for 2 years that maybe he wasn't completely invested in. Now, we know that James Gunn isn't a big Superman fan, but he's talking about how great Superman is, how he's a big galoot. I mean, that description of him being a big galoot does really concern me, already creatively. But I shouldn't prejudge, and you shouldn't prejudge something we haven't seen yet, but in a way, we have to. Because once he makes his Superman movie, if it's not a good take, it's yet another Superman movie that half the audience are not going to like. Look at these DCEU movies. I mean, the box office for Blue Beetle is fucking embarrassing. Their excuse of it not making money the opening weekend because of a tropical storm is embarrassing. And if that's the case, why did it only make $2 to $3 on $2 to $3 million on this Friday or this weekend? It's embarrassing that you're using a tropical storm as an excuse. This is how low this industry is sunk because it's being run by someone like David Zaslav. As I say, we hoped for better. We thought this guy was good. We thought this guy maybe could save WB and DC. But he's clearly not going to do that. I said this yesterday. Don't give a shit about Batgirl. But here's the facts. You do not shelve a movie and don't inform the people before you do it. But shelving that movie when it was ready to go was very problematic. Here's the problem. Is it any worse than the Flash movie? No. Is it any worse than Blue Beetle? No. About the same. Why didn't you release that film? Because, as I say, he's coming to save WB from going into receivership and bankruptcy. That's his job. He had to choose out of the Flash, Blue Beetle and Batgirl which one to write off for taxes. As a tax write-off so they could get some money. They decided Batgirl because they worked out it wasn't going to make as much money. Guess what's happened? The Flash barely made $3 million and there's no way Blue Beetle creeps to $3 million. So basically Batgirl probably would have done about the same as the Flash movie and Blue Beetle. And look, as I say, he's bad for DC, Zaslav. I used to defend him. When they were first attacking him, I was defending him, but I'm not going to do it anymore. His decisions simply don't make sense. His micromanaging of DC is a problem, and let me tell you why. If you understand the entertainment industry, which he doesn't, if you understand DC, which he doesn't, I don't mind you micromanaging the situation to make sure nobody fucks up and thinks that they can do whatever the hell they want with DC. But that's not the case, David. You know jack shit about scripted entertainment. So how dare you micromanage this situation? You don't have a fucking clue, mate. You've decided because of the MCU that cinematic universes are a thing to do. You're trying to do it with Harry Potter. You will fail. You will fail with this cinematic universe. People are not coming in to watch these DCEU movies because your man James Gunn has made mistake after mistake. And the problem is you're getting him to interfere with these DCEU movies. And that's why when or if Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, most probably when Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom flops, you will fire James Gunn. Because James Gunn would have been responsible for the Flash movie flopping, for Blue Beetle flopping, and Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, which he really is interfering with. He's the one who's come in, right? But whose idea was it not to do a fresh reboot and interfere with these remaining DCEU movies? Which is the dumbest idea ever. None of it makes sense. I mean, listen. You're all elite fucking people in this industry, and I'm not. You know, I am just someone who grew up around the entertainment industry, who bought a run-down theatre and rebuilt it and wrote and directed and started starring in his own plays here in Cyprus. I'm very, very small time. But I understand the industry I'm in. But I'm not famous. I'm not successful. But I grew up around the thing. So I have some knowledge of it and the people who work in it. I feel bad for the people who work in Tinseltown and around, you know, peak entertainment these days. They're treated like fucking shit. And it's become a very extremist place. They're so political. And the last thing on their mind is entertaining people, making money. Because you're there to make money. And the best way to make money is to make the right decisions. And WB haven't been making the right decisions for a very, very long time. They came up with Batman Begins in 2005. They then had Superman Returns in 2006. They had Green Lantern, I think, in 2011. They could have had 3 films already in a cinematic universe. So back then, what they were doing was they weren't into cinematic universes. They were into people, individual directors giving their take. 3 DC movies that could have begun a cinematic universe before the MCU got in there before the MCU, and we would have been way ahead of Feige and those fuckers. Do you know how angry that gets me? We didn't take advantage of that situation when we had 3 films. Batman Begins, Superman Returns, and Green Lantern. So Batman Begins is great, Superman Returns is inconsistent, great, and not so great. Green Lantern has some interesting moments, but the execution isn't great. And there's no need to go over that. That was the time to start a cinematic universe, even before Feige started one. But that was DC Entertainment, using the terms entertainment loosely. These people don't have a fucking clue. That was the old regime. And now we're here. Now we know the cinematic universe bubble has burst, but they don't seem to know. That's amazing to me, because they're so blinded by their own greed that they can't see what's happening to the MCU. What do they think is going to happen? That it's suddenly going to be fixed? No. People have made their minds up. They want to go to cinemas to watch films, not another episode and another episode and another episode. Feige did really well for 3 phases, and that must be applauded. But it also hurt cinema, because the audience started to wanted to watch TV series on the big screen. And that hurt independent filmmakers, and it hurt anyone with a good idea and a vision. The MCU destroyed cinema, and they need to rebuild it. They need to cancel the MCU. They do. And they need to start bringing in auteurs and making independent individual movies with people with a defined vision. You want to do the Fantastic Four? Do something interesting. Bring an auteur to do something interesting, right? Do a Silver Surfer movie. Do something interesting. Fascinating character. You know, there's so many things you could do with Marvel. You've done the kiddie, family-friendly shit. But that's the problem. Marvel are owned by Disney, so they're not going to be visionaries about what they're doing. But WB are different, have always been different. The problem is they're not the studio that were brave enough to greenlight Oliver Stone's JFK. Those days are gone. They're reactive cowards. And they've got a man in David Zaslav running all of this that doesn't have a fucking clue, who disrespects his own employees, and it's a problem. I don't care which way you fucking vote. I don't care if you're a third wave feminist or whatever you think about the world. Take that shit out of my face. I don't care. I care about DC. I care about these characters. I care about these heroes. I care about movies, entertainment, and escapism in general. And it's been damaged. But anything that's been damaged can be fixed. But a cinematic universe isn't going to work. People will come out for Superman Legacy as much as they probably came out for Black Adam. And near on 400 million. If they get China, maybe 500 or 600 million. Maybe they'll make that, which is about the same as Man of Steel. And here's the thing. What they did with Man of Steel was right. They decided very bravely to make a new contemporary movie and not go back to the past and redo the Donner movie. My first movie. My first superhero movie. The very reason I love Superman. I will never hear a word said against that movie. But that was made in the 70s. It was released in 1978. You can't, as I keep on saying, you can't have that type of pacing and that type of movie. It isn't going to work. And what Snyder, Goya and Nolan did was very, very intelligent. They contemporized who Superman was. Some people weren't with it yet. You know when you first land and your ears hurt? It's a bit like that. People needed to get used to it. A Man of Steel sequel would have been perfect. Then people would have been used to the environment this new contemporary Superman was set in. I don't blame people for being a little bit upset after Man of Steel. It was a lot to get used to, but it was the right move. It's exactly the type of Superman that this jaded audience needs. He wasn't a dark Superman. He wasn't a depressing Superman. Not in Man of Steel. He was exactly who Superman should be in the modern era. Superman Begins, great relationship with Martha Kent, you know, great Lois Lane, great Perry White. I think he may even be my favourite Perry White. He was great. Everything in that film was modern day and contemporary, and it worked, and it was a brave thing to do. And all they had to do was give people a chance to get used to it. And the decision to move away from Man of Steel and bring Batman into a BVS type of movie was a mistake. There's no question. Affleck is the best Batman, best Bruce Wayne. He should have got his own movie and they could have crossed over later on. I'm not saying I wouldn't have wanted BVS. It's a great movie. But that could have happened down the road. The decision to be reactive after the Man of Steel box office, which made them a substantial profit, don't forget, was the big mistake that's brought DC on its knees and to where it is now. You had a great Superman, you had a great director. Nolan and Goya would have carried on making these movies if you didn't push them away, right? But you kept on changing your plans. From Man of Steel to Batman versus Superman is literally kind of a new plan. And then from Zack Snyder to Johnson Berg is another new plan. Then from then to Hamada, from Hamada to Gunn. No matter who runs this shit, and we know the same people are really there hiding in plain sight. It's fucking obvious. And it's obvious that Zaslav is a gambler, an idiot, and someone that's just brought in to save a company that's been run by really, really stupid people. But it was Man of Steel. And going away from Man of Steel and reacting to that box office, even though they made a substantial profit, that destroyed everything. But I'm telling you now that Superman Legacy will not make more money than Man of Steel. It won't. It won't be better received than Man of Steel. Now, if I'm wrong, you can clip this and I'll apologise. I'm always happy to say I'm wrong. But I don't think look, they're going to go back to the past. They're going to create, they're basically going to world build in this Superman movie. Use Gunn's other characters and, you know, world things, right? And copy and paste Superman the movie. They're going to do both things at the same time. And I don't think it's going to go down well. Now, when we needed a cinematic universe like this, world building and doing a Superman movie with different characters, with Green Lanterns and this one and that one, it may have worked. But people are going to say, as they're saying, you know, we want Superman to have his own stage. We want Superman to have his own movie. We don't want the building of a cinematic universe in a Superman movie. That's what people are saying. That's not what I'm saying. I think it may be interesting. Who knows? But but also, I think that's a messy idea as well. Because as I've been saying for months, it's all in the execution. And if you get that execution wrong, where you're doing a kind of Superman 78 type movie, and he's gonna go even deeper, and, you know, bring in crypto and things like that, because he really wants to please the comic book community, because maybe he thinks that's where the money is as well. What we've got here, everyone, is an extremely messy situation created by really, really messy people, because David Zaslav shouldn't be in the position he's in.